Okay, we're gonna start with going over the hatching technique, and you can use any ink pen that you have at home. So a black, just the cheap Bic black ink pens work just fine. If you have a blue or whatever's in your house, that's okay too. This is the pen that I typically use if you're somebody that's into art and you got like the Prismacolored pencils and stuff. This is the artist grade quality ink pen, but you can really just use any pen that you have at home. Be careful when you use some of the jelly pens because the jelly ones tend to smear a little bit. You're welcome to use them and try them out, but typically feel like the cheaper ink pens actually work better than some of these gel ones do. So we're talking about hatching technique. All that is simply making parallel straight lines. In order to get a darker, we're just going to move the lines closer together and we're going to overlap them more. And we're just going to keep going over this until it's a darker shade. So you will shade on each bar dark to light. So simply that means that the ones in the darker are going to be layered more and the lines are going to be closer together. And by the time you get over here to the lighter area, your lines are going to be farther apart. You're going to have less of them. So you will shade dark to light in the example that's also included on your sheet in the slides. Cross hatching is simply taking the hatching technique and you're overlapping them and crossing them and making perpendicular lines. So I'm just going to take my pen this direction and then I'm going to go back over it in the opposite so that these lines are now perpendicular. And I overlap them. In order to make this dark, I'm just going to keep going over top of it. Lines are closer together and they're overlapping more. So again, this value bar is going to go from dark to light. So by the time I get over here when I'm doing lighter areas, my lines will be farther apart. More like that. Scribble technique. This sounds simple, like I just scribbled an ink pen, but we're not looking for this when we're doing scribble technique. Okay, it's actually more about layering like this. Okay, and you would just keep going over it and layering more to get darker. It's always easier to start out lighter and then build up to the dark because you can always add more ink pen to make your picture darker. You can't go back and erase these lines here to make it lighter. So I'd start off with less and then work my way up to darker to make it more layered and appear darker. All right, so down here in the spheres, you're gonna do each of these techniques. So this first one, the sphere in this pot, is hatching, and then it moves to cross hatching, and then it moves to scribble technique. What I'm really looking for here is that you've practiced the technique in the appropriate space and that you've tried to shade dark to light. So for example, if I'm doing hatching, I'm trying to do like parallel lines here. My light source is maybe here. I'm going to be shading from dark to light. This is really what I'm looking for when I look at your work, which means here too, if you look at the example, you can see where I've done dark to light to create shadows and highlights. Okay, so these first two examples are the hatching, and then you'll move down here to the cross hatching and do the same thing. You'll do dark to light. So for this time, you're going to cross the lines back and forth over top of each other. And then down here you will use the scribble technique. Please keep in mind again when you're using scribble technique. So if you're drawing, this week's practice art is a bee. So if you're drawing a bee, that if I'm using scribble technique and this is my wings, The scribble technique does not mean that I am just doing this, okay? It means that I am using a kind of structured, ordered ink pen to shade dark to light. You see the difference between this kind of scribble technique and this. All right, so please make sure that you view the example that's on the slide and the example that's on your worksheet so you can see the finished product. Copy the example that you have to the best of your ability using these 3 techniques. Make sure that your bars go dark to light, and make sure that the objects at the bottom are also shaded dark to light. If you don't have a printer at home and you can't print the paper, then just do your best to redraw this on your own and then shade it in.